Welcome back to Star Potential. I'm your host, Julie Jo, and today I have a very special treat for you. I have brought in my favorite person to talk about all things spirituality with me, and that is my husband, Bane, as you will hear me refer to him. Now, others might know him as Brian, as he first introduced himself to me. He is from Serbia. And when I was working at the time with some other Serbs, and I talked to my friend Ivan, and I said, hey, I'm going to go out with this Serbian guy named Brian. He said, go back and ask him what his real name is. There's no Serbian Brians. And that's when I found out his true name was Branislav. Of course, to which I said, why did you ever tell me your name was anything else? My goodness. Anyway, I am so excited to bring him in to talk with us today. He has been on a spiritual journey of his own for many years. After watching his own transformation take place, I couldn't help but be interested myself. He has really helped me walk through my own awakening. And so this is the first and definitely not the last time that we will be talking with my guy. Welcome to Star Potential, a podcast where we explore the meaning of our existence while having a few laughs and sometimes tears through stories from the road of life. I'm your host, Julie Jo Hughes. As a stage performer, my life is quite literally about song and dance. I believe that life here on Earth is a playground for discovery, not a contest to be won. We ask questions together like, how do I evolve my consciousness? And how do you sing a passionate ballad when there's an old guy in the front row with his balls showing? True story. Stick around for these fun conversations. Branislav Vukojevic is a nationally certified personal trainer working in fitness and nutrition for more than 20 years. After a personal journey through spiritual awakening, his work deepened to integrate the understanding of the workings of the mind, and he became certified as a hypnotherapist. With a holistic approach to health and well-being, Branislav, also known to his clients as Brian, is passionate about helping others to develop spiritual practices as a foundation alongside their mindful nutrition and functional movement. Please welcome Branislav. Bane, welcome.
Thank you, Sugar. Nice to be here.
It's so cool to have you here. I'm so excited and can't wait to introduce the listeners to you. So welcome to Star Potential.
Oh, thank you. I'm so delighted to be here drinking this nice tea early in the morning.
Yes, we are recording this at 5:30 in the morning because that's kind of how we roll around here. It's before the kids are awake and, real life.
It's the only time we have.
Yes. And actually, we could start right there. During the pandemic, when for a while we weren't sure if either of us had a job, and we kind of had to switch everything, as many people did. And that's when our early morning routine actually began. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Due to circumstances, we actually had more time for each other. And then we started getting up early. You would do your own meditation. I would do my own meditation. Sometimes we would do it together. And then you would have time for your workout also early in the morning. We would accomplish a lot of things. That was really a different time, but we felt like much closer to each other during that time.
Yes, we did.
Probably after that, I think I had already practiced my own early getting up routine for years before that. But I think you switched your own morning routine because you didn't have that before.
That's right. I actually remember having a really hard time because I wasn't sure, how am I supposed to make money during this time? And I was kind of panicking about, at first, that I wasn't sure what I should be focusing on and what I could do in a productive way during that time. And I remember you said, meet me tomorrow morning at the kitchen table at 4 a.m. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And then we did a nice guided meditation because we just needed to remove that blockage out of your mind. You were a little bit lost at that period of time. Yeah, so one good morning meditation set you off after that.
That's right. And then it was incredibly hard for me at first, but with you kind of holding my hand, both literally and figuratively, you taught me the power of intention first thing in the morning and the silence to drop myself out of the head and just down into the body and the heart. And we slowly began a journey of I kind of began my journey of exploration into meditation at that time. But it's also when I discovered that I'm a morning person. I had gone almost 40 years of life with no idea. I really thought I was a night owl because a lot of that is circumstantial because of my job as a performer. I'm working at night, and so I need to be alive at night. But I had no idea that I would be like 6 times as productive at that time of day than I am at night.
A lot of things in the past we thought that we are or we were because we were guided with just egoic consciousness and we were chasing everything that our conditioned mind wanted to do for us. So we were mistaking ourselves for that. So you thought that's who I was. But then you started implementing something else, and then you started feeling on a deep layer of yourself, like deep in your heart, that you're actually different, that you're actually something else. There is so much more to explore. Yeah, I do remember that early morning meditation. It was a thick layer of identity and fog that we needed to break through to get to that heart. Yeah.
I remember you using the phrase that my mind was like a dog on a leash and you had to pull the chain to keep it from going too far astray. And that was such a good metaphor. Actually, it was a good visual for a visual person like me. I could see what you meant by when I'm allowed to my own devices, my brain just goes everywhere and it's not helping me.
Yes, absolutely. It's like you need to have a bone and throw it to a dog, and you need to distract him all the time in the beginning. So somebody like you who was starting back then didn't have any experience. It's very hard just to close your eyes and quiet your mind, and then what? What do you do with that? The chatter is so unbearable that mind won't do that at all. It will just get you out of that position within 30 seconds. So you need to be guided. You need some guidance, and even a simple guidance. I would say some simple things like open your eyes and then close your eyes. And then when you would do it, and then open your eyes. And then when you ask the question, so I said, no asking questions. Close your eyes. And then I would torture you. You would think probably, why am I telling you to open and close your eyes so many times? You were so confused. But that's exactly what mine needed. Very simple instructions.
That's true. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into helping people with meditation. So I knew at that point that you had been, it's always harder to hear something from someone who is your spouse, but you had been talking to me, singing the praises of meditation for probably at least 2 or 3 years already at that point. And I knew that you were changing into a different person, but of course, it's always hard when your spouse is telling you to do something. You tend to wait until someone else gives you the same message and then you can hear it. But my question is, you're a specialist in all things movement, and people would assume you're all about muscles and nutrition. And so why spirituality? Like, what does that have to do with what you do with your clients?
Well, we would have to go way back in the time when I actually started changing myself. Because none of this, what I'm doing with my client, would happen if I didn't change myself on some fundamental level years and years before. So that was somewhere in the beginning of our marriage, actually, when, I was not married to you and we didn't have kids. Then the stakes in my life were not too high, and I was pretty much responsible only for myself. And I didn't have much conflict with my own mind back then. Everything was smooth. And then everything was changed when we got married and Elliot was actually born. And then we started having first little fights in the marriage. And then little fights, it turned into a little bit bigger fights. And that was actually my catalyst when I started asking myself, potentially, how am I going to continue all this? I came to the United States alone when I was 28 years old, which was like 6-7 years before I met you. So I don't have my family here. It's not like, I can go tomorrow and I can, rely on someone's support, like very in person, yeah. So I realized that the change has to be made within me. Otherwise, I might, God forbid, be divorced and see my kids like once in a while. And when I had that thought was so striking. I felt like a knife in my chest that was absolutely unbearable for me. So I couldn't allow that. So I realized that change has to be made within me. And that was just the bare beginning. I started quieting my mind. I didn't even know what I was doing back then in the beginning, but I was reading all kinds of books. First of all, I would latch on like a law of attraction type of a subject, Your thoughts are creating your reality. And then all kinds of other motivational speakers I would listen every single morning. But that was the point when I started. Now we talk about approximately 12 years ago, 10 to 12 years ago, some like bare beginnings. But I started actually, at least in the morning, I started changing my morning routine. Before that, I would just get up probably like 30 minutes before I have to leave the house. I would wash my face, had some snack or coffee, and I would just hit the road. But now I started...
Because you're getting up at like ridiculous times of the day.
Well,
right?
back then, I mean, my first client back there in New York would be, I think, around 6 a.m. So I would get up not that early, maybe at 5 a.m. And then by the time I finish everything what I have to finish, I'll be in time. But now I started getting up a little bit earlier, maybe like 4:30, because I wanted to have some 30 minutes for reading a book, maybe listening or reading a book, and starting some first meditations, maybe like 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes. Didn't even know what I was doing, but somebody that I was watching said, you should close your eyes and start to meditate. Anyway, but then those 30 minutes over time turned into, 45 minutes before, then 1 hour before, and then 2 hours. So instead of 5 a.m., I started getting up at 3 a.m. So now I would have 2 hours for myself before I leave the house. So now slowly there is more content that I'm reading. There's more content that I'm adopting. So my practice is slowly growing. Of course, it was not as steady in the beginning. It took probably months and years until it completely took off. But
You're
that
talking
was...
about in California now.
No, I'm talking about still in New York.
Oh, you're just talking about your meditation practice.
Yeah, like bare beginning, yes. Mm-hmm. And then after all that, we decided to move to California 6 years ago, actually. And then my meditation practice started deepening. I started reading more books. I started studying Eastern philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, Upanishads, Taoism, and all the stuff that comes from East. And then slowly, little by little, like even within the movement, I didn't know in the beginning what is that I'm grasping with. But then over time, I slowly started to come to my broader awakening, and then I started sorting out exactly what am I doing, what does that mean, truly awakening an open mind. And then I started coaching my clients. It was all in the beginning spontaneously. It started like 6 years ago with some of my first clients. I would teach them how to meditate, just the basic meditations, and then they will slowly grow with the practice. So now it's so much on a different level, and everything is so much deeper. I already developed my own philosophy when it comes to movement itself and when it comes to stillness. As you mentioned, everybody in the beginning, and me too, I was so physical that I would move my body and I thought that's who I am. But then by stilling my body after all these years, I realized that it's so much more within me than just the movement itself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you have this kind of motto that you use. I would say it's kind of your own personal brand. And though you work within a corporation, the people that come to work with you specifically, they seek you out because you're a little bit different and you do things your way within the reasonable acceptance of the corporate expectations. But the clients that work with you on a regular basis know that you have this motto, which is kind of the driving force behind everything you're doing with them on a daily basis. Can you tell us a little bit about that motto that you use and what it means to you?
Yeah, so when it comes to movement itself, I'm also based on the development of the skill. So I practice a lot of hand balancing. But my movement itself is actually functional movement. And then within the functional movement, everything has to be developed from the ground. So first, joints have to be developed the way they're supposed to be. Every different kind of stimulus that we can apply to the joint, we should apply because joint is supposed to be resistant first. So then within the joint, there is something that is coming out of the joint, which is the muscle. So then we're spreading from inside out first. So joint strengthening first and the muscle. And then we are putting all pieces together, and now we get one big whole as a body, as a functional body, and our body is working with each other with all the muscles synergically. So I always like to explain that we all have the base within us when it comes to what is my ability, how do I move, what is the quality of my movement. So that base is actually my abundance, and then that base needs to grow all the time. That base, I like to explain, almost like a sphere. So now out of that base, we can have all kinds of tentacles, and those are our passions. So maybe I want to play basketball, maybe I want to do swimming, maybe I want to do running, or I want to do handstands. But if that tentacle now overrides the base and we keep pushing towards the tentacle all the time, then the size of the base is not growing and it cannot support the tentacle. If tentacle becomes so much bigger, then the base is going to start crumbling. We start experiencing all kinds of injuries, so we're not going anywhere. So technically, the base needs to grow. So let's say the size of the base, which is how do I move in a quality way today. So what is my ability? What is my flexibility, strength, and everything that I possess? Let's say we demonstrate something like this, and let's say I have a goal to run a marathon, and that goal is outside of my base. Right now, I don't have a capacity to run the marathon, but that marathon, for example, it's somewhere outside, yeah? So now if we made a decision out of our egoic consciousness and I'm just going to sign up right now and marathon is going to be in 8 months, then the egoic consciousness is the one that is going to dictate the plan and program and all the expectations. And since egoic consciousness is dictating that, and then egoic consciousness is not listening to the body at all because it's not in connection with the body. So it's not going to read all the signals that the body is telling to the mind that maybe you're hurting it somewhere and maybe you should be strengthening this and that. Maybe you're pushing too soon, too hard, and you should step down. But egoic consciousness doesn't have time for that because I set up myself a goal and I need to prove myself for some reason to someone or to myself or seek for some validations. So there's no connections. And then reading the proper information from the body, it's actually not there at all. But what if we just focus on the base and we see ourselves as abundant within the base? So I'm not lacking anything. So now, if I am within the base and I'm always pushing the edge and I'm living at the edge of my evolution, that is that quote that I like to say. That's the question you were asking me in the beginning. So I like to say I always live at the edge of my evolution. If I'm performing a certain movement and it's in the middle of the base, then it's too comfortable. It's not going to evolve me. It's not going to stimulate my tissues for growth. But if I'm constantly living at the edge of my abilities, then my base is evolving. So now as my base is evolving, one day it's going to grow so big that it's literally going to cover that spot, which is that marathon over there. So now my base is huge like this. Marathon used to be there, yeah? And in now 8 months, I have ability to run the marathon. And then I go online and in 2 weeks I find some marathon and that's it. Done deal.
Beautiful. And what I'm hearing you say here too, this is another thing that you like to talk about, that the person that came to you that wanted to run the marathon, or maybe they didn't come to you, maybe they're just in their own, but they want to run the marathon, but they haven't expanded their edges to really be totally ready for that yet. But you're also saying they are fully abundant within where they are at that moment too. It's like we're fully abundant and whole here. And also when we expand, we are still whole and fully abundant. It's just that now help me kind of paint the picture here for them, because there's a beautiful line between what we're talking about kind of metaphysically and then also spirituality, in the fact that we're never lacking something outside of ourselves. Yes. We're just not in relationship to it yet. Talk to us a little bit about being in abundance from wherever you are.
Yes, so that aspect of me being a physical movement and coaching my clients in a physical sense was always there. But then this other aspect, which is the mental aspect, coaching their mind, became the most important aspect over the times in the course of this last few years, since I actually grown a lot. So I feel almost like a Western type of medical doctor who, after, 10, 20 years of practicing its own medicine, and helping others, he's realizing that he's being a hypocrite and he's not actually treating the causes at all. He's treating only symptoms and he's not actually helping them at all. So I felt the same thing. It's like how strong I can be. Oh, I want to be strong. I want to get in shape. I want to be flexible. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to have a six-pack and whatever that is. And then at the end, I had everything, but I'm still not landing at that famous destination, which is going to give you fulfillment and contentment and finally feel abundant, yeah? Well, that actually doesn't exist. That's actually just a state of mind. So that's what actually I started working on it with my clients. The most important first is to install different type of thinking. And we will start with the basic stuff, yeah, like we would even be on the floor and I would create that small 2-3 minutes routine that would be on their knees or sitting on the floor among all the other practitioners on the floor. And I would tell them close their eyes and let's set the intent. And through little nuggets, like in the beginning, each training session, I would try to awaken the awareness within them for them to understand that they are the awareness. They are the awareness of their own mind. They're not the mind. They have the mind, but they're not the mind. They're the awareness of the body. They're not the body, but they have the body. And just little bits and pieces every day. Every time when I see them, then we will start our session like that and we set intent. We would change our state of being in abundant state of being through, conscious breathing just for a few minutes. But in the meantime, I would teach them also deeper and longer meditations, how to do that on their own. We would have a few offices down there in my club and we would go there and have our own private setting a little bit. And then we'll spend 10, 15, 20 minutes doing meditations. And then it's up to them if they want to take off and start doing that on their own. And I have a bunch of clients who adopted my teachings 100%. Now they're avid meditators for years right now. And when you see the changes in their life, that's actually so beautiful because the mental changes are then reflecting everything, even physical and health, physically health type of changes, not only mental changes. And that's exactly what is the most important. Where we are now, we are abundant. There is nothing else. Maybe because of that simple realization that there is nothing else. See, when you close your eyes and you think, what do I have? And okay, do I have this and that? And then your 5 physical senses says, well, you have body fat the way it is. You have muscles, strength the way it is. Your conditioning is the way it is. Your stress level is the way it is. So I have nothing else. So you're brought to a question to yourself, do I accept that or not? If you don't accept, then whatever step of action you make, you're making out of lack and resistance to what is. So now when you make step of action, every action has its own results. Since now your internal vibration is coming out of lack, so then the cells are actually very dense. Every single cell within your body is vibrating slowly because they're very dense. So the vibration, it's almost like a wave. It's going through the dense matter. It's so slow, it cannot even penetrate. So now when you exercise, you're providing an action. That action actually has its own information. That information now wants to reach the cell. Because the cell is so dense, it's not opening in a proper way to receive the information. So that information will not be adopted properly.
Oh, wow.
So now we might actually exercise much longer to reach our goal. But let's say eventually it will happen, of course. How many times, even me in the past, with Ikigai consciousness, I achieved some goals.
Sure.
But then another burden comes, maybe enjoyment of me, what I achieve in that moment, it's going to be such a short term that it's just fleeting. And then my ego immediately goes to the next destination. Okay, I'm not satisfied with this now because I never learned how to live in abundance because I always thought the abundance is somewhere in the future. So now let me set another goal. And let me become prisoner of my actions again until I get to that next goal.
Right. So it's a never-ending cycle. It's
Never-ending cycle.
only it's the mirage in the desert where you think there's a big waterfall ahead of you, but then you get to it and somehow it's vanished, and there's another waterfall, another 100 yards in the distance. And that's kind of how the ego's living by the ego's motivations works. And so I would say that's one of our main motivations of why would we even want to meditate? Why do we want to learn how to tap into this inner knowledge of full abundance and being able to tap into infinite quantum, potentials? Because the living from egoic mind can never bring peace. And then here's another thing I'd like to discuss with you. In the beginning, I talk a lot with this because I tend to be quite analytical and I need to understand something completely and scientifically as I'm deciding to embark on it. And one thing I kept coming back to you about was, but if I learn to be satisfied with where I am now, what's going to be my motivation to keep getting better? Talk to us a little bit about that. And you kind of touched on, coming from lack versus coming from abundance.
Yeah, that's a typical egoic question because the way he sees the reality is, okay, so if you're telling me that I need to accept myself for who I am now, and this is the abundance, so then what is the point of living then? What is the motive from here, actually? But what that egoic consciousness doesn't see is something that it's deeply rooted within us, and it can be revealed after we transcend our egoic consciousness, which is your innate passions, unique talents that we all carry within us since we were born. Then you're coming to realization, actually, what is that you're truly good in? What is that you can offer? You already have everything within you. What is that you can express on a daily basis and share with the world and with everybody who is around you? So that it's exactly what is becoming so much more deeper motive than to pursue it and express. You see, it has nothing to do with, okay, so I'm going to sit home and be a vegetable and do nothing, yeah? It's actually quite opposite. Now we're realizing actually what is our true passion. Live your life as a bliss, that saying. That's just a saying until you truly override the conditioned mind and quiet the mind and you see that everything you've done, actually, it's not that yours. It came from someone. It came from your conditioning, from the society. You expose yourself with your five senses and everything that your eyes and ears hear and see in the past, it had to be interpreted with the mind. And the mind was the same as eyes and ears. He was just hearing everything that he was hearing from outside. So all the ideas and concepts came from someone. Came from the family you grow up, from the society that you were brought up, from the old institutions like religious and school type of institutions. So technically today when you look, you can say, well, I'm hypnotized because all the billions of stimuluses that allowed to hit my five senses created these concepts and ideas and dogmas that I carry in my mind, and then I act on it. But now I see that actually I'm not who I thought I was. I'm just the product of the society.
Yes, and through all of those stimuli and all of the places that we hold in our society and the roles we play, we begin to limit the definition of what we are, right? We start to see ourselves as these labels. This is something I talk about a lot on here is, oh, okay, I am the mother of these people. I am the daughter of these people. We begin to kind of box ourselves in to something that's easier for our mind to understand the parameters, to function in this 3D reality, right? But from that mind that knows how to function in 3 dimensions, it can never understand why you would want to break all of that to see that that was just a matrix. That was just illusions to help you function in 3D. Actually has nothing to do with who you are at your complete core and essence. And so this is something that we also discovered and studied on a deep level when you and I decided to take a a spirituality course with Aaron Abke. And for 7 months, we together went through the curriculum of 4D University. And I want to introduce this because we will probably refer to Aaron and his teachings a lot. We are still alumni of the program. We still are on weekly calls with him and learning all kinds of things. But this is a concept that Aaron talks about a lot, which is from the egoic consciousness, you can never truly ask these questions and understand what you are, because the ego would never want to see to his own dissolution, right? So you have to ask these questions from a much deeper place, which is actually the awareness of these things that we think we are.
Yes, yes, yes. And what you're saying now is something that we started understanding during that course, which was last year. But then to add something after that, then I started having interest about hypnotherapy. So a few months ago, I think 6-7 months ago, actually beginning of last year, it was in January, I enrolled into a course, 4 months long course about hypnotherapy. So then I became a certified hypnotherapist. And then exactly what you're explaining right now, it was also mentioned in the course. You can't understand on the level of the surface, which is intellectual level. We need to bypass that level. We need to go much deeper in the different brainwave states. For example, you and I, we communicate right now, and we have a beta brainwave state, which is frequency between 14 and 30 hertz per second. In 1 second, there are like 14 or 30 vibrations. So right now we need that, and that's fine. We need to communicate and with our intellect. That's why we're in that frequency. But as soon as we quiet our mind, then we drop down the frequency. We go down to alpha, and alpha is between 7 and 14. The sweet spot, they're saying like 10, and which would be the best place for adopting the information. So now what happens is that now we are going down into your subconscious. We are quieting the mind. We're bypassing the intellectual mind. So now when we ask questions, when we brought certain subjects, then intellectual mind, it's not there to question that. So he is susceptible for information. So around 10 or 7 beats per second, then we go even deeper. From alpha, we go to theta. That's even more trance state. Now when we go there, we're even more susceptible for information. So now in those hypnotic states, we can ask the questions, and a lot of times that's like a shadow work. And then the question and the answer will come to us. And then when the answer comes to us, it's actually very evident, and we always knew that that answer is within us. But something else different happens in that moment, because the vibration within us is not coming from the mind. It's actually coming from the heart. Then the heart is actually opening to receive the message. And it's like the information and the answer is so simple, but we truly understand that that's where we were mistaking ourselves for, and this is what we should be doing and changing our lives in that way. And it's almost like some kind of energetic opening happens within us, which is the blockage that we used to kept within us with the different vibration and egoic consciousness. So it opens up, and it's like you have a permission slip now to proceed and do what you always wanted to do, change your certain behaviors or whatever that is. It's like, I don't know, somebody wants to leave drinking, for example, and they know they should be dropping down, but they can't. But then in that state of hypnotic state and altered consciousness, they have some information, they understand why. What is the reason? There is much deeper reason behind the drinking. There is something that they carry against someone or against themselves. They judge themselves for certain things, or maybe they're not worthy. They punish themselves. And now almost they have like a permission slip to continue with completely different actions. And sometimes even just one session, one therapy can be very opening and life-changing for some people. Sometimes not. Sometimes it has to be practiced many times until certain changes occur, like permanent changes occur.
That reminds me of another phrase that Erin likes to use, which is when we're operating at this kind of surface level, it's just conditioning rising to meet circumstance. And so kind of whatever we have programmed or whatever the society, all these billions of stimuli, whatever we're kind of programmed to do is how we will respond. That's why we snap at our
Yes.
kids. That's why, we take it so personally when somebody says something that hurts our feelings. That's our programming. And so in order to go in and to unlock the hard drive and to change the coding of what's in the program, we cannot operate that from the surface level. We have to go into the subconscious in order to change that program.
Yes, but that going into subconscious has to happen consciously.
Okay.
So we use our conscious so we can go into subconscious, yes. That programming that you said, yes, also refers to non-doership. So I'm not the doer of my actions. Everything that comes out of me, as you said, my programming literally spits out within the certain circumstance to meet the circumstance. So everything prior to that I adopted about myself with the billions of stimuluses, it will come out of me. So, for example, if I'm, person who is watching news all the time and watching politics, so then I have certain concepts and ideas about certain subjects. So now when the certain subject comes out, I will then defend my ideas. And as soon as I defend my ideas now, if I have a feelings of some kind of a fear, of worry about something, that feeling now is the reminder that we are experiencing some kind of a suffering. Soon as we know that we're experiencing suffering, which is some kind of a conflict, if I have to defend something and I worry about something, so now that stimuli that I was exposed in the past created this conditioning is coming out, and now it's creating my own suffering. So now if I want to change that, I need to start doing different kind of practices. I need to change the stimulus. If the stimulus was always watching the news and listening to politics or economy or whatever that is making me anxious, then then let me change the stimulus. So then we call them spiritual practices. And then all of a sudden you find yourself as someone who is on a spiritual path. I started my own spiritual journey. I'm on a spiritual path, and I have these practices that work for me. There are many different kind of spiritual practices we can practice, but sometimes a lot of them, they are not working for some individuals, but let's find some that work for me. Yeah, quieting the mind or contemplating the nature of the mind, doing self-inquiry type of work, or mindful meditations or silence or walking meditations or reading the book sometimes, whatever that is. At the end, every practice has to land into a deep silence and truly studying your own nature of your own mind, which is the human mind itself, but your own mind because you are unique, but also the nature of the true self. Those are two different things. Studying the nature of the mind, everything that it's in your own head. So all the concepts and ideas that I carry within me, where's that coming from? So you start questioning everything. And then you start studying the nature of the heart. And then through certain life circumstances, then you start experiencing that you are actually acting differently than in the past. So sometimes then in the past you would be snappy or short-tempered or defensive with certain people or in some circumstances. But now all of a sudden you have patience. So now you are cultivating patience, acceptance of others, support, love, kindness. So now, where's that action coming from? That's not coming from the mind. It's coming from the heart.
And I can't wait. In future episodes, we can talk more about the relationship between the mind and the heart and how they actually have to be in coherence in order to be able to kind of tap into that higher potential, constantly expanding. And so that is why we continue to call it a practice. This is not a destination where we arrived and say, okay, now I'm done evolving. I've done all I can do. It's
not like
continual.
you get like a diploma and I have a diploma
Right.
and put it on the wall and that's it, I'm done now.
Now I'm certified in enlightenment and I've
Yeah. So
aced this human thing.
think like this. every day we're going to have new stimulus. Every day we're going to be exposed to the new stimulus, yeah? So let's say I practiced for 10 years spirituality, and let's say I truly, and okay, let's even take a Buddha, for example. So the story of Buddha comes that he became enlightened at age 35. 5 to 7 years before that, he renounced everything and he went to study the nature of his own mind and the nature of the God on his own, and with the help with different prophets and sages back then, which is 2,500 years ago. But then once he became enlightened, which is he was 35 years old, then he preached and he taught Buddhism and his way of living, his philosophy for the next 40 years. So I think he was like 80 or 85, 80 years old when he died. But every single day he would do his meditation practices first, not only in the morning, probably several times a day until he died. So let's say practically we saw now he's teaching for 10 years and now he's 45. So now he decides, okay, this morning I'm going to skip my meditation. Okay. So now he skips the meditation. What does that mean? If you skip the meditation immediately, you're providing a different stimulus. Whatever you're doing instead of meditation, you're providing a different stimulus. Okay. That little stimulus will not make any big deal in your mind. It's not going to make you different. But what if you decide, tomorrow I'm fine. Second day, I'm not going to meditate. All right, third day, I'm okay. I don't need to meditate. Everything is fine. I'm still preaching. Everything's fine. But let's say you continue 5 years like that, 10 years like that. 10 years after, he lost his enlightenment because now he exposed himself to who knows what other different stimuli. So now those stimuli are shaping his mind.
Absolutely. And actually reprogramming over those 10 years.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We have to be the gatekeeper. The watcher has to remain present. Yeah.
All the time. All the time.
Branislav, this has been so much fun. We have so much more to unpack, and I can't
so
wait
much
to
more.
that.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up today, I would really like to ask you some rapid fire questions so that our listeners can get to know you a little bit more, and then we'll get to pick your brain more times.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's go into some fun here. As a kid, what did you always want to be when you grew up?
I always wanted to be a citizen of the earth, of the planet.
Tell us, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Yugoslavia. I don't know if some probably older listeners know and heard about Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia used to have 6 different republics: Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. So I was born in Serbia and part of Yugoslavia. And then Yugoslavia had all kinds of conflict in the 90s, and then First War, Second War. And then we were not favored by the many other countries in the world. So at that time, I was a teenager, but I was coming out of my teenage age, and I just wanted to travel the world, but I couldn't. So I needed to get visa for even going to the neighborhood country as a tourist, but it was hard to get visa. So we would be just stuck in our country. And then I grew up watching all kinds of movies from United States and all over the world, and I can see how the world it is, yeah? So I felt always like there are chains around my body because I can't live life the way everybody else in the world lives. I would think to myself, I'm the same as somebody who lives in the United States. I have 2 hands, 2 legs, and how come they can just sit in a plane, they can travel whatever they want, but I can't? So I always had that dream that I am going to be the citizen of the world.
That's so beautiful.
And I don't need visa for any travel.
Look at you now. Now you have the golden badge of American. You can go wherever you want.
You're right.
So you did it.
Well, that's another topic.
Yeah, we'll dive into that another time. Which season of the year makes you feel most alive?
Oh, definitely spring. But now that I'm answering that question, that probably comes from the time where we live in East Coast in Serbia, because Serbia has the same weather as East Coast. Then the spring, it's like awakening. I love the awakening of everything that is around me because it spikes the awakening within me. But now living here in California for 6 years, spring is every day. So it's hard to pinpoint that it's spring, actually.
That is a beautiful motto of your life, though. It's the expansion. It's the rebirth. It's the renewal. I can see why you really identify with spring. If you had a theme song for every time you made an entrance, what would it be?
Billie Jean, Michael Jackson.
Okay. And why Billie Jean?
I fall in love with Michael Jackson when I was 10 years old. He was like my first artist and performer that I would come home from school and I would have my own first VHS tape, audio cassette actually. And both actually VHS, so I would watch his concerts nonstop. And then I would even learn how to sing his lyrics, but I didn't know English at all. It was be sounding almost like a gibberish to someone who was listening. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so Michael Jackson is just the first thing in my heart when it comes to development of the music and the sounds.
Beautiful. And I think it has something to do with his dance moves, no?
Dance moves. Well, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It spiked the energy within me. And when I was a kid, I would dance like Michael Jackson all the time.
Yeah. It always comes back to movement for you.
Yes.
It's always
physical. Very physical. Yeah.
Very physical, yeah.
Yeah.
Finish the sentence, Bane. When I'm 80, I'll be
doing one-arm handstands in front of my grandkids.
Oh my God, I love it. That anyone who knows you knows that is not hard to imagine.
Yes.
And our kids are still going to be saying, Dad.
Okay.
Favorite dessert?
Plasma torta.
Oh my gosh. Okay, tell them what that is.
Well, that's in Serbian. Torta means cake. But plasma is the name of the of the cookie. Some famous popular cookie that I grew up. It's still out there, of course. These new upcoming young generations, they live on it like we did in the past. It's just a cookie, specific cookie that, comes from Serbia. And it's just a cake made out of that cookie. It just speaks to my heart. I think I was 10 years old. And it's very simple to make. There's no cooking in it. Just put ingredients, you mix everything, and then that's it. Then you put some kind of a frosting cream on the top. But I think I was 10 years old when my mom taught me how to make that cake for the first time. 10 years old, I would mix everything on my own because I was anxious. She would be at work and I was like, Mom, I can't wait for you to come home and make this for me. I want it now. And then one day she's like, okay, let me teach you how to do that. So you don't have to wait for me.
I love that.
So, yeah.
What's a book you would recommend for everyone to read?
Okay. It's so interesting, 10, 12 years ago when I started reading it, almost like some Pandora's box became open and I became insatiated. I remember one year, because I read through Audible. I think one year I had like 50 books. Audible was at the end of the year, you get like a summary. 50 books I chewed up and all kinds of stuff. But in this last 10 years, I read so many books. But one definitely can resonate with me, and it will be almost like my own Bible. I would recommend this book to everyone, and whenever I want, I just go back to that book. It's actually from Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God.
Beautiful. I still need to check that one out. And I think what's interesting about that is that you say it's actually not a book about religion, as one might assume.
It's not. It's not at all. And me as a kid growing up in Yugoslavia used to be a communist country, so we couldn't practice religion as a nation. Whoever practiced it was secretly. But my grandfather, he was communist, and then my father also. So I was not brought religiously at all. But although my religion is Orthodox, Christian Orthodox, like Russians and Greeks. Anyway, so when I started reading books, I thought maybe it is meant for some religious people because I started being curious a little bit more about the religion back then. But then it appeared that it's not at all. And then even says sort of a warning, it might shake up your religious belief if you are really deeply religious.
Interesting. Sounds like that could be a really good place for people to start if they're curious about how to get in touch with your higher self and your inner wisdom.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much for this first interview. This was super fun for me, and I hope for our listeners and for you as well. And we will continue our conversations going forward. Bane, if they would like to know a little bit more about you or to get in touch with you, send you a message, how should they do that?
Instagram, although I'm not active on Instagram much, but they can always find me on Instagram.
Great. And what is your handle?
Branislav Vuk.
Yes. So I will put that in the show notes for sure. Thank you so much.
So nice to be here. See you next time.
Oh, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did. I want to help you with a few of the key takeaway points that we talked about today. So we talked about what are the mistaken identities that we falsely hold and that we might be clinging to. We talked about how to begin to live mindfully and start our days with intention. So if this kind of thing is brand new to you, that gives you a little bit of an introduction of how you can begin to incorporate these practices of silence and self-inquiry. We can only truly find change through silence and self-inquiry to truly understand and become the awareness of the programming. We talked about how we are not our body nor our mind, but we are the awareness of the body and the mind. We talked about how fulfillment and contentment are not a destination, they are a state of mind. We also talked about that it always comes back to the decision of whether or not we accept where we currently are. If you accept, you can be in relationship to abundance. If you do not accept where you currently are, then you're in a state of lack. We talked about how we are all hypnotized or programmed, if you prefer that word, with billions of stimuli. And we talked about an introduction to hypnotherapy, how it allows us to reprogram from deeper levels inside, which is how and where we can begin to rewrite our own code. We talked about how it's a lifelong practice because there are always new stimuli. So we are always the awareness and integrating all of the new stimuli that we come across. We talked about how we are abundant where we are now. We are always fully abundant within our current base level. We talked about how making decisions from egoic consciousness is not in connection with the body and how we must listen to the body to integrate our innate abundance, which allows us to expand our edges of evolution. And we talked with a personal trainer how diet and exercise are secondary to the vital foundation of spirituality for true inner change. I hope that this was insightful for you, that something resonated with you. I would love to hear your takeaways. If there are specific questions that you have for Branislav, I would love to pass those along. Maybe we'll even make an entire future episode out of it. So make sure you send us a text or a direct message so we can begin that conversation. Thanks for listening. Thank you for tuning in to Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with a friend or shout us out on Instagram with the tag @TheJulieJo. That's TheJuliejo. I made you a gift. Please visit us on Instagram to receive my Grounded in Gratitude singing meditation. Want a shot at our monthly giveaway? Please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts with your email or Instagram handle so we can give you credit. Thank you for your love and support. Until next time, keep shining your light. And that's a wrap.